Harvest Homestead. I'm Lolly, and this is the second video in the University of Canning You Can video series, which is geared toward canning for beginners. This is taught as a basic level for those who have never canned before, have been intimidated to try it, and want to learn all about it. My prayer is that this series will help you to know that you can do it. And today in this video, we're going to talk about not just what we're doing. We know that we're canning, but why are we canning? Why are we doing the methods that are necessary in order to preserve all these beautiful foods on your shelf at home? All right, let's get into it. Home canning lets you enjoy the taste of fresh, natural produce all year long. And while preserving food in a glass jar may seem a little bit old-fashioned, it's actually a modern, practical way to embrace healthy eating and gourmet flavors. Best of all, it's simple. Home canners can reap the benefits of homemade meals and snacks in just one preserving session. By canning your own food, you save valuable time in daily meal prep, a true advantage in today's fast-paced world. And each jar of home canned goodness can be enjoyable on its own or used to create quick and delicious snacks. Much like baking, food preservation is an easy next step beyond cooking. In canning, this process is known as heat processing, and it's both straightforward and efficient. In fact, many home preserved foods take less time to prepare than baking a cake or a casserole. And unlike baked goods, however, home canned goods don't need to be refrigerated or they won't take up freezer space. Properly sealed jars can last in your pantry for a long time. So let's talk about how it works. During the heating process, jars are filled with food and sealed with a two-piece metal lid and metal ring, and they're heated to destroy harmful microorganisms and create an airtight seal. This prevents spoilage and contamination. The exact processing time and temperature depends upon the acidity of the food, and we'll talk more about that in the future. So what do you need to get started? Well, canning at home is easier than you might think. Many common kitchen tools can be used to preserve foods like jellies, jams, pickles, and tomatoes. To get started, you're going to need a canning jar to fill up with your food, and then you're going to need the two-piece, your metal lid and metal ring. And you're also going to need a canner to heat process your filled jars. For those who are brand new to canning, I always recommend that you start with water bath canning. Both of these are water bath canners that I picked up at Walmart for about $24, $25 a piece. This is a granite-ware 21.5 quart pot, and this is a stainless steel 21.5 quart pot. Now, with this purchase, you're going to receive the pot, the lid. This is the lid for the granite-ware. And this is the lid for the stainless steel. I love that it's glass and it's see-through. That comes in handy when you're processing, but this does just fine. You also will receive with this purchase a rack in which you will set your jars on. It's important to do this for two reasons. One, for safety, as you're going to have a 21.5 quart pot of water boiling, literally boiling hot water, and you're going to have to place your jars in and out of that boiling water. So this will allow you to do that safely. Also, when you are pressure canning or you are water bath canning, you never want your jars to touch the bottom of your pot. And the reason for that is you risk them breaking. And trust me, that is a mess to have glass and food all inside of your hot boiling water. It's a mess. Ask me how I know. And sometimes it does happen even with the rack, but it shouldn't. It should not happen. Not to say that it won't, but it could. However, if you're using this, you can pretty much be rest assured that it's going to be done safely without breakage. Also, I wanted to show you this. This is the textbook for UCAN, University of Canning. This is where we're learning our information from. I'm a fourth generation canner who have always trusted the Ball name, both in their products and in their tried and true recipes. You can be assured when you follow these directions, you follow these recipes, you are doing it according to USDA safety guidelines, and you can be trust that your food will be contaminant free for you and your family, which means that you're not going to get sick. Most of the recipes in this book use a water bath canner for the heating process. And while you don't need to rush out and buy one, having the right equipment can make the process more efficient, especially if you plan to process multiple batches. A standard boiling water canner holds up to 7 quart-sized jars with extra space for an inch of water above the jar and then 2 inches of airspace above that to prevent boiling over. Now, commercial and this model that I've showed you and the other model that I showed you previously, they will come with the lid, the pot, and the jar lifting rack, which keeps the jars upright and off the bottom of the pot for even heat distribution, in addition to keeping them off the direct heat and preventing breakage. And if you don't have a boiling water canner, you can use a large stock pot instead. You can simply create your own rack by tying the rings around each other and making a rack. You can use a wire rack, or you can use another type of metal rack to place the jars on. And again, this helps to circulate the water evenly around the jars while keeping them off of the direct heat and making sure that you have good, even heat distribution. Water bath canning is used to preserve high acidic foods such as pickles, tomatoes, syrups, jellies, and jams. High acidic foods don't require as much time to process, well, because they're high in acidity. So you don't have to have as much heat or as long of a processing time to kill out and get rid of all the harmful bacteria. And we're going to get more in depth into all of that in the future. But I just wanted to show that these are the types of foods that you would water bath can. And this is the pressure canner. This is what intimidates everybody the most. I always hear, I don't want to do it. I'm afraid I'm going to blow up my kitchen. I hear that all the time. And of course, we're going to start out with water bath canning to get you introduced to the process and get you comfortable with it. And we're going to work up to pressure canning, but I still need to talk about it and tell you about it. This is the anatomy of the pressure canner. When you purchase this, I got this at Walmart. It's the Presto brand. And back when I purchased mine, I bought them for $79 a piece. I have 2 of them. Well, as of today, March 16th, 2025, when I checked the current price, they're at $90. And so what you're going to get when you purchase this is the 16-quart pot. You're going to get the lid, and I'm going to show the anatomy of that up close here in a moment. You're also going to get the rack that goes in the bottom. Remember, we don't want our jars to touch the bottom. We don't want them on direct heat, and we want to be able to evenly distribute the heat around them, and that's what this rack will allow us to do. You're also going to get this fun little thing right here, which is a weight, and it goes at 5, 10, and 15 pounds. And all of that's determined by your altitude. And again, we're going to get more in depth into this in the future. Don't be intimidated. I promise you can do it. Now, this will hold up to 7-quart jars to process at a time. Now, I'm going to give you a look at this lid and explain some of the features that it has. One of them, though, I want to tell you is that because it is a pressure canner, this fits on and it locks. So it's going to stay in place while you're processing your food. But let me show you a few other things you need to know about it. So this is the anatomy of the pressure canner lid. And I want to show you something right off the bat. On the inside, you're going to see there's a rubber seal. It's important to make sure that this is always in good working order. Check it, make sure there's no dry rot, that it's not coming apart or breaking on you in any way, because it's very important to have this seal so it's going to function and lock properly in place on your pot. Now, the other thing that it has here on the top is a safety valve. Now that is kind of like a little rubbery piece, and it just stays there. You also want to make sure that this is always in good working order, that it's not dry rotted, split, whatever. So that's what that is. That is a safety valve. Then you also have your vent pipe right in the center of the lid on the top. And you always want to check and make sure that you can see through it. Before you're going to look through this hole and make sure that you can see through to the other side and that there's no blockage, because it's very important that that vent is open. The other thing you have is a pressure indicator lock. So as the pressure builds up inside the pot, this is going to slide up and lock into place. And again, we're going to go more in depth into all of these things in the future. Now, on this vent pipe, that is where your weights are going to go. Now, this throughout the cooking process is normally what racks everybody's nerves. They're like, I'm scared it's going to blow up. But it won't. So this is the pressure canner. This is what you would process low acidic foods with. Now, things like meat, poultry, seafood, and vegetables such as green beans. Because they have a low acidity, they require longer processing time and a higher heat to make sure that you get rid of all the harmful bacteria. And that is what a pressure canner is used for. Now, there are some wonderful meals in a jar that can be prepared in a pressure canner. And I hope that we're going to get to that here down the line, and we're going to actually do some of those recipes. And then all of a sudden you've got this wonderful meal in a jar. You've had a long day and you're ready to get home, and you have got one good cooked meal in a jar just waiting for you to dump it out in a saucepan and heat it up. Now, this is intimidating, but boy, can it make life easy when you get used to it and you learn how to use it. And we're going to get there. You can do it. Now, there is something important that I want to note right here, right off the bat, that a pressure canner and a pressure cooker are not the same thing. It is unsafe to pressure can foods, low acidic foods, in a pressure cooker. It will not reach the desired heat level. You can't process it long enough, and it's not big enough to handle what the pressure canner can do. So I just wanted to make that little side note, just in case somebody was wondering. No, a pressure cooker and a pressure canner are not the same thing, and you should not pressure can in a pressure cooker. It's very important to note that glass canning jars are the only containers that are recommended for safe home canning. And authentic canning jars have a threaded neck that works well with these special metal bands, or rings as I call them. They make sure that you can get a secure seal. Now, the jar's rim must be flat, smooth, and free of any chips, and that's to make sure that it's going to properly seal with this lid, which has a sealing compound, as you can see, right around the edge on the inside. So you're going to place that lid on top of your jar, then you're going to take that metal band, or ring as I call it, and you're going to make sure that it's secure in place, and that way it's going to align well for your given heating method, whichever processing heating method you're using, whether it's water bath canning or pressure canning. A proper canning seal requires a two-part metal lid system. This consists of the flat lid with a sealing compound and a metal band that screws onto the jar. The flat lid is made of tin-plated steel with food-safe coatings and has a special channel here underneath that holds the sealing compound. And the threaded metal band, as you can see, the threads in there, it secures the lid in place during the heating process. And then once the jar cools and the lid seals properly, this band can be removed and you can store this with confidence on your shelves. Let's talk about canning utensils, what they are and why you need them and how to use them. So I have a kit listed in my Walmart storefront, which the link is in the description of this video. And typically within that canning utensil kit, you're going to get a funnel, you're going to get a pair of jar lifters, you're going to get what's called a debubbler, and most times you're going to get a little lid lifting magnet. So that is what's going to come in that canning accessory kit. Now, a few other things that I like to use that I feel are important to share are, I have these tongs that I use, and I'll show you why they're important here in just a moment, as well as I have these two ladles. One of them is slotted and one of them has pour spouts on either side. Now, these I purchased at an Amish store or Mennonite store in West Tennessee near where we used to live. So I've put some ladles in my Walmart storefront if you want to take a look at those, but I did not get these there. I purchased these actually from the Mennonite store. Another thing that you're going to need, of course, is your lids and your rings or bands, and of course your jars. And you're also going to need a paper towel that is soaked with 5% acidity vinegar, and I'll show you why that's important. So we're just going to pretend here that I have processed some food that needs to be water bath canned. So I've cooked up my recipe and now it's time for me to jar it up. Now, ideally, my jar should be hot because I boiled it for 10 minutes at least to sterilize it before putting my freshly cooked food into it. So what I'll do is I will take and I will put on my funnel, and then I'll take my ladle, whichever one I need depending upon the recipe that I'm jarring up, and I will scoop in that food to my ladle, and I'll bring it over here to my funnel and jar it in and get it ready. Now, some recipes, well, I say some recipes, every recipe in canning requires a different what's called headspace. Now, the headspace is the distance from the top of the food that you've put into the jar to the top of the jar itself. So say you will need a 1-inch headspace. Well, this debubbler that I have right here is a wonderful tool because it has a measuring, looks like stairs on the bottom of it. So here is a 1-inch for 1-inch headspace. This is for a 3/4 inch headspace, 1/2 inch headspace, and a 1/4 headspace. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to come over here and show you what we're doing. And first of all, you can, well, it's not showing. You can kind of see the measurements are listed there on the edge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jar up my food, and to make sure that I got the correct headspace, if it's a 1-inch, I'm going to place the 1-inch marker there on the rim of the jar, and I want the food to not go past this point right here. So I'm setting it there. And so ideally about a 1-inch headspace. So the food would be here. This would be empty space from this rim to the top of the food. I hope that makes sense. So I'm setting that there to measure it. Likewise, if it's a 1/4 inch headspace, I'm going to set the 1/4 inch marker there on the side of the jar and make sure that that food does not go any further than that 1/4 inch. Okay, so once I make sure that my headspace is correct, and at this point, if it isn't, you can add food in or take food out to achieve that proper headspace. So once I've done that, then I'm going to take the other end of this and I'm going to move it up and down all around that food. And I'm going to take it all the way to the bottom of the jar. And the purpose for doing that is to debubble it. Air is not our friend in the canning process at all. And we're going to learn more about that in depth in the next video. So I'm going to take this debubbler, I'm going to move it all around, and what I'm doing is taking that trapped air and the trapped bubbles and causing them to come on up to the top. That is what the purpose of this is. So once we've achieved that, then I'm going to take my paper towel that is soaked in the vinegar, and I'm going to wipe all the way around the rim of this jar. And as I'm doing it, I'm putting a little pressure with my finger. Ideally, you should have inspected your jar beforehand to make sure that that rim is smooth and free of chips, because that is what is required to safely can. So what I'm doing is while I was jarring that food up, especially if it's something sticky like a pickle relish, I could have accidentally gotten some on that rim. Well, that will prevent a proper seal. So I'm going to make sure that it's nice and clean, and I'm sanitizing it with that vinegar all at the same time. So once I've achieved that, then I'm going to take, and ideally your lids should be hot as well. I'm going to take that lid lifting magnet. I'm going to go into the pot where I have just boiled my lids for 10 minutes in order to sterilize them. This could be a little controversial. Some people don't think that you have to do that. Some think you do. I personally think you do. I want the most sterile environment possible for the food that I'm processing and I'm going to store on my shelves, because by doing all of this, I can be rest assured I have done everything within my power to make sure that my food is safely processed and it's safe for me and my family to eat. So once I've done that, I'm going to lift up that lid and I'm going to place it with that seal side. You know, we got that seal on the edge down on my jar. And then I'm going to take that band and I'm going to put it there on the lid to secure that in place. And then I'm going to take my jar lifter, and there is, let me show you this too. There is a lip, if you will, right here, if you can see that, around the edge of that jar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this jar lifter and I'm going to get a hold of it, that jar, just like this. And that way I can safely pick that jar up and put it over into my canner and set it here on the rack. Now, this is a quart-sized jar, so you got to think I'm going to have a 21.5 quart pot filled with very hot water that should be, I've already had mine boiling. I get it to a boiling point. I'm placing my jar in there. When you open up the lid and you start putting the jars in there, then that water's going to calm down a little bit, but it's still boiling hot water. So I'm using that jar lifter to put that in there. Now, another thing, this is why I feel like the tongs are important for safety. Now I've got to take those 7 quarts jars filled with food that's going to be heavy, and I'm going to have to place it inside that boiling water. So I use these tongs to kind of help me get that in there in a safe way so I'm not burning my fingers. Okay, so then I'm going to go through my processing time. My timer's gone off, and it's time for me now to get that rack out. Well, I'm going to use these tongs to get a hold of those handles for the jar lifter to get that back up out of that boiling water so I can safely get the rack back to the edge of the pot. So these are the canning utensils, what they're for, and how you use them. I got so caught up in explaining that, I forgot the last most important part. So once you pull those jars up out of that boiling water, you're again going to get your jar lifter, and then you're one at a time going to pick up those jars, and you're going to take and set them. Now this is a dish drying mat. You can use a towel if you want to, but you want to protect your counter space because these jars are very hot. You're going to take those jars and you're going to place them on your towel or dish drying rack in order for them to sit for 24 hours. This allows them to cool down and allows for that seal to take place. And that seal, the lids start popping, as we call it, that is just music to our ears. That is the sound of success. Now that is the canning utensils, what they're for and how you use them. All right, that's going to do it for this video. I said, I think at the beginning that this was the second video in the You Can series, but that's not true. This is actually the third because we went on a shopping trip in the previous video. So this is the second teaching, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here, and I hope and pray that this is informative, that it's helping you to learn, and most importantly, that it's giving you the confidence that you can do it. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the comments. I plan to do video responses to them. I'm going to let the questions collect up, and then I'm going to do a Q&A video to answer those questions. So please feel free to drop them, and just drop any comment. Let me know, are you enjoying this series? Is there anything in particular that you want to make sure that I go over and cover? Well, let me know in the comment section. And if you haven't already, I would love it if you would like, subscribe, and share. All right, now, y'all, until next time, y'all be blessed. Bye.